For about 15 years, this grave at the Mount Hope Cemetery was home to a mystery. The young victim of an execution-style murder lay there in rest as a John Doe. A break in the case led to the victim being identified as Frank Bresson, missing in Riverside, but it left the question, who did it? It's a cold case the San Diego Sheriff's Office has been working on since 2010. And with your help, they hope to find Frank Bresson's killer.
Marilyn Sullivan drives from Orange County to tend to Frank Bresson's grave in San Diego's Mount Hope Cemetery with a big sister's loving touch.
I'd much rather be talking to him and having fun and out doing something.
Frank Bresson was 22 when he vanished in Riverside in August of 1995. Marilyn feared the worst, knowing Frank had been hanging out with a dangerous crowd, but still, she held out hope.
Maybe he's working undercover. Maybe he's packed up and moved someplace else. Maybe, he just got in so much over his head that he made some changes.
As the family searched for Frank in Riverside, San Diego County deputies made a gruesome discovery.
A few days after Frank Bresson disappeared in Riverside, a body was found along this Santa Margarita Trail in Fallbrook. It was a young man who had been restrained and blindfolded and shot execution style in the back of his head. It would take 16 years for authorities to identify that young man because of a clerical error made in Riverside County.
Investigators in Riverside failed to enter Frank Bresson's missing persons report, so San Diego deputies trying to identify the body came up empty. They even shared photos of Bresson's tattoos with CBS 8, hoping that someone would recognize them.
Right now, we're checking with the missing persons report. We haven't identified him yet, but we are following that, that path.
No one stepped forward, and the case went cold.
It leaves a hole in your heart, and you just are constantly watching over your shoulders, like living in that limbo of, was that him walking down the street? I thought I saw him driving. I thought I saw him at the gas station.
But Frank wasn't in hiding. He had been murdered and buried as a John Doe in an unmarked grave in the Mount Hope Cemetery. In all the time Frank was considered missing, Marilyn never gave up on finding him.
Every year, I call the police department to find out the status, what's going on, and for the longest time, they just told us, we don't have anything, we don't know.
After she called in 2010, everything changed.
A couple days later, they called me back and they said, I think that you weren't able to find him because his paperwork wasn't entered correctly.
The mistake corrected and Bresson's identity confirmed in 2011 with DNA triggered an investigation by San Diego Sheriff's homicide detectives.
Detectives then reach out to his family, his friends, and begin interviews and try to find out his victimology, his background, where he was when he went missing, where his last steps were, who he spoke with, what he was involved with.
Detective Brent Spencer says the sheriff's homicide unit has worked hard to make up for lost time.
There are multiple persons of interest in this case that have been investigated and looked into, and we are currently looking into.
With something like this one where it's clear that it's some kind of an execution, somebody that was involved with a bad element, does that increase the likelihood that someone knows something?
Absolutely, there's somebody that knows something out there, whether that be the person that did this to Mr. Bresson or planned this and had it carried out. There's some information out there.
Frank's gravestone has his name on it now, and Marilyn doesn't express any bitterness over the failures in the investigation, but she's still fighting for justice, for Frank's memory, and for the young life taken before he could find a better path.
It was very heartbreaking to hear that somebody could take someone's life like how they took my brother's and just be living out there, carefree. I do have hope. I do believe that we will eventually find the person who is responsible for this horrible action.
If you know anything about Frank Bresson's murder, you're urged to contact the Sheriff's Office. And if you'd like to see more stories from the True Crime Files, you can watch them on our streaming platform, CBS 8 Plus.